Thanks for listening to the Woodward Podcast Network. Check out more shows by searching for us on Spreaker or wherever you catch your podcasts. The Woodward Podcast Network with Krupka Dental Associates.
This is Dr. John Krupka with Krupka Dental. Orthodontics is more than creating a beautiful smile. We provide ortho and airway evaluations which can reveal developmental and behavioral issues. Orthodontic treatment is now faster, more comfortable, and effective than ever before. Visit krupkadental.com.
Welcome to Fresh Take for Tuesday, August 24th. I'm your host, Josh Duclo, with conversations to get you thinking, not tell you what to think. Glad to have you with us this morning. Sunny, hot, humid, sticky. Yeah, it's August. Storms on the way, apparently a little sooner than Steve Balon from First Alert Weather had anticipated. So make sure if you've got plans for midday, you've got a rain alternative, or bring your umbrella or whatever you might be able to do to manage that eventuality. Expecting some rain here early afternoon. Stay tuned for more updates from First Alert Weather for the latest on that. And we've got our man, Zach Morris, working the boards for us in the Myron Construction Studio. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning, Josh.
How we doing today?
Doing well. Anxious to see how much rain we end up getting afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. It could be brief but heavy, and chances then throughout the next couple of days, it sounds like. So could be another round here of some wet weather in the next several days.
Well, we just went through a long stretch with nothing, so this is what happens. You go a long stretch, and then you get a couple of days of rain.
Yeah, right, exactly. We're getting used to this pattern. Not that we like it, but we know what to expect. All right, and what we expect every morning here on Fresh Take is after we say good morning to Zach, we get into the local news. And on Tuesday, we are joined by Catherine Braccio from Action 2 News, and the news chat is brought to you, as always, by Settlers Bank. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Josh.
How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good. Glad to hear it. Have you had a chance to enjoy some of the sunshine we've had lately?
Well, my family and I, we went camping at Potawatomi State Park in Door County, not last weekend, but the weekend before, and it was gorgeous.
Yeah, good timing on that one.
Oh,
nice.
Not a drop of rain, and the mosquitoes, they were starting to get bad, but not terrible. Like, they're just nuts right now. Yeah. I just went for a walk around my neighborhood with my boys last night, and I was like, okay, guys, keep moving. We got to outrun the mosquitoes.
I've had that experience walking the dog in the morning before coming to work, where you stand still for 2 seconds to let the dog take care of its business, and I'm swatting mosquitoes in those 2 seconds. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that when you mentioned camping. I'm glad you brought it up, and glad to hear they weren't carrying anyone away from the campsite. Which, you know.
Yeah, I feel like it was just, we were just heading into this period. It would have been miserable if it had been like last night, if we'd had that all weekend.
It can get really, really bad here, given the rain and the heat and all these conditions. When they're just right, these mosquitoes can be out of control. So I'm glad you had a chance to get out and enjoy the nice summer weather without that pesky summer companion being too much of a bother. Glad to hear that. And glad to have you with us this morning, Catherine. I want to start our conversation this morning with big news as the Delta wave continues here in Wisconsin. Governor Evers trying to get more people to get vaccinated. We've been making progress, but he's got a new offering to really get people out there to get their shot, doesn't he?
Yeah, $100.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes me think, okay, so Wisconsin's offering $100.
Right, as like
to
a cash
people
gift
who
card.
Yep. Yes, to people who get their first COVID vaccine between now and Labor Day. So that's through September 6th.
Right.
And my older kid turned 12 last month. So we got him his shot right away.
Yes.
And I kind of go, whoops, maybe we should have waited. But no, it's you want to get your vaccine as soon as you can. But for people who haven't yet, and maybe now that the Pfizer has been fully approved for people 16 and older by the FDA, fully approved as opposed to emergency use authorization, which has almost the same vetting protocols as full approval. But regardless, some people were waiting for full approval. So now is the time to do it.
Yeah.
It's $100.
Yeah, nothing to sneeze at. This follows news, was it last week, that tribal communities were offering $500 incentives? So I'm wondering if those folks could qualify for $600 total, right? I mean,
yeah, that's possible. And for the tribes, for many of them, it's not just if you get your first shot now. It's if you've already gotten it.
Oh, okay.
You can still qualify.
Oh, all right. Well,
we have more details on that at WBAY.com too.
Thank you. Yeah, some very and this story here about the $100 incentive. Another story at WBAY.com: 6 million COVID-19 doses doled out in Wisconsin in 36 weeks. Noting 55,662 doses were administered just last week, which is the most since mid-June. So we are seeing kind of a late summer, or we might call it Delta-affiliated vaccine surge as well.
Yeah, and it's hard to know exactly to what exactly we can attribute this, if it's more people understanding that the Delta variant spreads more quickly and they want to get ahead of this before school starts, or, maybe some people knowing now that Pfizer is fully approved will feel comfortable doing it. Like UW Health, Dr. Jeff Potoff, he's making the point that now that it's fully approved, this is just like any other vaccine now. The flu shot, the MMR that so many of our kids have gotten, chickenpox, like this is the same level of endorsement, of approval from the FDA. This isn't weird, scary technology. This has been vetted. This is safe. So hopefully more people will feel comfortable getting it now.
Yeah, I really hope that is the case. I think another factor here is vaccine requirements that have been put in place at things like college or a workplace. People who
now that we've had the full approval, the experts are saying that more workplaces and local governments and universities are going to feel emboldened to put mandates into place.
Yes. So we'll continue watching this and hopefully continue to see those vaccine rates tick up, and hopefully very soon here see at least emergency use authorization for those under the age of 12. I know that's a big concern here. Again, as we're heading back to school, lots and lots of kids getting back together, all the debates about masking in schools. We had that conversation yesterday here on the show. Last night, Appleton School Board approves required masking for all students and staff through September. They'll reconsider in October. So
Green Bay just decided to do full masking. De Pere meets tomorrow night to talk. We don't know what De Pere is going to decide, but they are meeting about it tomorrow night. So, a lot of districts, I think, looked at that CDC rule. I mean, you talked about this yesterday. That CDC rule about if all kids are masked, properly, and one kid gets COVID, if the rest of the kids were masked and the kid who had COVID was masked, they don't have to quarantine, which means they can stay in school, which is the whole point.
And this, I think, is going to be important with these masking rules, is having protocols that reflect the most recent understanding of how this all works, right? Protocols were one thing in March of 2020. It was another thing throughout the school year last year. We're now headed into a third school year with these considerations on the table. We certainly need to be taking appropriate precautions and actions, but they need to be reflective of the understanding we have now, not what we didn't know so long ago. And so updating those protocols is yet another reason why, well, it makes sense to put your mask on, to get vaccinated, right? All of these things, the protocols, as they reflect our understanding, are incentives in that direction as well, in addition to the $100 incentive Wisconsin residents can get if they get their first dose between now and Labor Day. So we will leave the vaccine talk there for now, because, Catherine, I want to talk about a migration of birds. An infestation of birds, one might call it. Bird scooters, of course. They flew into many communities.
How long were you waiting to trot that one out? I like it.
When I put that together this morning, I was like, ooh, that's going to be fun. Okay. An infestation of bird scooters flying into northeast Wisconsin communities this summer. And we're a few months into these pilot, in some cases, programs. And so communities are starting to weigh the success of these programs. And it comes at a time where I had missed this news and now saw it this morning at WBAY.com. A Green Bay man actually died with an electronic scooter accident in the Upper Peninsula.
Yeah, he was 39. We don't yet know his name.
Okay.
He was riding one in Iron Mountain, which is right over the border from Niagara there. And he wasn't wearing a helmet. We don't know too much about the circumstances of his death, but yeah, he was on one of those scooters. And then Bellin, that health system up here in the Green Bay area, they have told Action 2 News, that they had a patient who was in a significant scooter accident last week. And again, we don't know how severe that injury is or exactly what happened there. But, experts are saying that these e-scooters can be dangerous. The University of North Carolina has been tracking the number of people who died on these e-scooters since 2016, and they said 53 people around the world in the last 5 years or so died on those scooters. And part of the problem, experts say, is because many people don't wear helmets when they ride them, because the idea often is you just happen to be in a certain part of town and you need to get to another part of town and you hop on a scooter. You didn't bring your helmet with you.
Right.
So it's, it's just the circumstances make it tougher to wear one.
That convenience of having it there, hop on, go 2 miles down the road, hop off. Right. There's not a helmet readily available. And yet, just that little trip could be the one that if you take a wrong turn, someone steps out in front of you, right? There's a number of ways how these could result in accidents. And so it's not a surprise the accidents are happening, but it's important that we track and know what this looks like. And if there are policies that need to be changed, if the locations need to be changed, do speeds need to be modified, right? Some of these things can go up to 20 miles an hour. That can be pretty risky when you're riding that thing without a helmet. So important.
But the Green Bay area, the city of Green Bay has had an e-scooter with this. You're saying Bird because that's the name of the company that makes these scooters, at least the ones in Green Bay. They say that people have taken more than 13,000 rides on these things just since last month.
Yeah.
And the average ride is 1.4 miles. And we haven't had many accidents in the city, and so it's tough. Like, how common are accidents? What do we need to do about them? Do they invalidate these programs automatically? How do we look at this? So there's a lot of questions, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and yes, I agree. And I think the balancing of risk to our health versus benefits that come in other ways is a larger conversation that is relevant to lots of things we're talking about in our news these days. I will leave that as a concluding thought on our chat this morning, Catherine, because I think people being smart and using their head to keep their head safe is going to be part of this deal. And we didn't get time to talk about the shortage of bus drivers, but I'll send folks to WBAY.com to learn more about the shortage of bus drivers and why it's particularly acute right here in Northeast Wisconsin. Great reporting there from your team at Action 2 News. Find it at WBAY.com. And you can find Catherine here with me most Tuesdays chatting about the local news, brought to you by Settlers Bank. Catherine, I always appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Josh.
When we come back, a few more thoughts about that FDA formal approval of the Pfizer vaccine that came yesterday. Stick around for that and more Fresh Take after this on WHBY. It's Fresh Take here on WHBY, taking you up to the top of the hour with the latest CBS News and WHBY News headlines and that weather update from Steve Balon, First Alert Weather Team. But you heard the news yesterday. We talked a little bit about it here with Catherine this morning in our local news chat. The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, formally approving the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine for full regular use on Monday. Now, this does more than just kind of check a box. There are some things that are allowed now that weren't before. We'll talk about that in a second. But for context, more than 360 million doses of vaccine have already been given out. Now, some small portion of that is J&J. Some portion of what is left is Moderna. But I don't know. I think it's probably fair to assume something on the order of 100 million or more doses of the Pfizer vaccine have already been administered to people, are out there. And in arms and protecting people from COVID-19 infection, disease, hospitalization, and death. That is because these were approved for emergency use late last year. And we are still technically in the COVID-19 public health emergency, so that emergency use persists. But should that emergency end, the Pfizer vaccine is now approved to continue to be administered because it has this full approval. It also means Pfizer can promote the vaccine, right? I've heard people complaining that the drug companies aren't doing enough to promote the vaccines that they've developed. That's because they were, until this point, and given that it hasn't been fully approved, Moderna and J&J still prohibited from spending their own money to advertise their own product because it's not fully approved. So just one little wrinkle in the regulatory reality that many people do not know, but are really want to like blame the company for doing something wrong here. The law prohibited them from advertising this product themselves until it's fully approved. Now it is. That also means several other organizations, agencies, and companies are going to start mandating this thing. The Pentagon being one of the first among them, but not the only. Right? Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had said last week, as soon as this thing is approved, every member of the military and Defense Department will be required to get it. And so that is sort of the official ramifications. We're already hearing interviews this morning on CBS of people for whom we are told this approval made all the difference. And this was so predictable as the next stage in the mainstream media narrative about the vaccines. But you got to listen really carefully. I was listening this morning to the piece that CBS had in the World News Roundup. They talked to two women who were there to get the vaccine. The one woman, she didn't even mention this. She's like, yeah, it's on me. I just hadn't yet. And I needed to, and here I am. Doesn't sound like the full approval made a difference for her. This was the chance she had, and this happened to be the person the reporter talked to. The other person is like, oh, yeah, this makes a big difference. Also, I'm required now to have it before I go to college. So, I don't know. Neither one of those testimonials sounded to me like it was really a strong endorsement of the narrative they were trying to put out there that, oh my gosh, this FDA approval is really going to make a difference for people. I think there are some people for whom it will make a difference. I don't expect it's a significant proportion of the unvaccinated. But yet again, we see network reporters twisting the testimonial to fit the narrative, not wanting to let accuracy get in the way of a good story. And then we're wondering why people are so mistrustful, why people don't put faith in the authorities that tell them things. This is why. Dishonesty, misrepresentation, and people will say, oh, but it's harmless. Who's hurt by that twisting of the testimonial? Okay, fine. That is an ends justify the means argument, and I really try to avoid that because to me, there's always a point at which that becomes no longer a good argument. Because, yeah, if you're making stuff up, you are using a testimonial to tell a story that testimonial is not actually telling. People can tell. We are smart enough to pick up on that as listeners to the news, and we just generally cultivate a sense of mistrust. And if you are unclear about what has caused all of the problems with this pandemic, or I'll say a great portion of the problems, it's mistrust. A culture of mistrust. We don't trust the people who do the work to tell us the truth. We don't trust the people who are there to report the facts are doing that. And we have good reason to feel that way. And then we end up with mistrust in the context of a public health emergency, where hundreds of thousands of people have died, many of them unnecessarily. All because of this mistrust. Because some people think they know better and are going to just do what is good for us rather than just be honest. And I have lost patience with all of it. Speaking of losing patience, do you ever lose patience and you're just driving too fast? You get a little reckless? If you did that as you were driving past a cop, I bet you'd slow down. What if that cop was in the sky? The State Patrol taking to the air this week to catch fast and aggressive drivers. Is that enough to get you to slow down? I want to hear your take on aerial speed enforcement after the news. Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. For your elder law and estate planning needs, call Sarah Kahns and Peter Harbach at 920-250-9959. Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. Welcome back to the show. It's Fresh Take on Tuesday, August 24th. I'm your host, Josh Duclo, with conversations to get you thinking, not tell you what to think. Glad to have you with us. Glad to have our man, Zach Morris, along, working the boards in the Myron Construction Studio. And I'm looking for your take. The State Patrol is taking to the sky this week, looking to catch fast and aggressive drivers. Is just knowing they're up there enough to slow you down a little bit? Are you going to change your driving based on your awareness of their speed enforcement effort? I want to get your take, your thoughts, your reactions, your questions, your response to learning that the State Patrol is going to be patrolling the roads from the skies. They'll be in our area today. I'll tell you exactly where, but I want to hear your take on the Settlers Bank phone line, 281-1150. Does knowing about aerial enforcement cause you to slow down? Or is it all just the same for you? Would it make a difference if that enforcement was on the ground? When you drive past a state patrol car, sort of hiding in the weeds in that median, does that cause you to slow down? I want your take on encouraging better driver compliance with the rules of the road. What's it going to take to make you slow down? How do you think we can get others to slow down and drive more safely? Put the phone down, pay attention, and focus on the driving. Share your take now on the Settlers Bank phone lines. 281-1150 is the number, 281-1150, or email your take. Send it to freshtake1150@gmail.com. freshtake1150@gmail.com. Later this hour, we turn our attention back to the movie premiere of Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip. See the connection there? Road Trip? Yeah. Ryan Liebel, the director and star of Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip, will be joined this week with her co-star, singer and songwriter, Frankie Moscato. She's in the film. She provided some music. We'll talk a little bit about the experience of creating that film, supporting local businesses, and providing musical accompaniment to a film. We'll ask Ryan how she goes about scoring an independent film and how Frankie went from providing music to having a role in the film. When Ryan Liebel and Frankie Moscato join us to preview the in-person premiere event of Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip, happening in Sheboygan later this week. Then next hour, we welcome back Jesse Opoyan, Capitol reporter for the Cap Times in Madison. We'll talk about the latest controversies over mask mandates. We'll talk about $50 million in aid to Wisconsin farmers released last week by Governor Tony Evers. And we'll catch up on that census data release, what it means for redistricting, and, oh yeah, more lawsuits. We'll talk about all of that with Jesse Opoyan, Capitol reporter from the Cap Times, when she joins us in the 10 o'clock hour, before we wrap it all up here for the day with the takeaway. But right now it's time for Your Take. We do this every day after the 9 o'clock news. Pick a story from the headlines, and I want to get your thoughts, your reactions, your questions, your take. And today, it's the Wisconsin State Patrol. They are taking to the sky. Normally they'd be on the highways. Now they'll be flying over the highways in an aerial enforcement effort, hoping to spot from above those drivers who are going too fast, driving too aggressively, and trying to get them nabbed by officers on the ground. This aerial unit is patrolling our area today. I'll tell you exactly where. And here's the interesting part about this. They say they aren't necessarily hoping to write out a bunch of tickets. They want us to talk about this. They want you to know that this is happening because they hope that improving public awareness of the traffic laws and awareness that aggressive enforcement is underway will encourage voluntary compliance. Does that work for you? Does knowing that the State Patrol is up in the sky, potentially watching you, does that slow you down a little bit? Is that something that's going to affect your driving? Or would it take something more? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how aerial enforcement could contribute to driver compliance with traffic laws. Share your take now on the Settlers Bank phone line. 281-1150 is the number, and Jim is up first. Jim, thanks for the call. What's your take?
Hey, Josh, I'll tell you, it's not so much speeding that's irritating. It's when, I'm on the road 200-300 miles a day now. Okay. I just took a little part-time job. And, I set my cruise at 75 and nothing bothers you. What bothers me is the guy that's doing 85 miles an hour, jumps over in the right-hand lane, sees a squad car, and slows down to 65 and makes it look like you're tailgating him.
So they
do that all the time.
I've seen that too, Jim. Absolutely. So it's when they see the police officer that they slow down, based on your experience.
Yeah, and that's too late.
Yeah.
I mean,
amen to that.
They've got radar on you. they got radar on you for a long time before you see them.
So let me ask you, Jim, you spend a lot of time on the roads. Do you think having the aerial enforcement in the sky, do you think that'll make any difference? If people know that that's up there, do you think that'll get people to slow down?
No, people aren't going to slow down. They're only going to slow down when they get 2 or 3 tickets and they know they're going to lose their license.
It's got to be those consequences.
It's not a deterrent at all, Josh.
Yeah.
It's not a deterrent. People are going to do what they're going to do and hope they got to get away with it. Like, putting your hand in the cookie jar, hoping that the cover doesn't fall down, make a noise so somebody knows you got in the cookie jar.
There it is. It's only the consequences that are going to change behavior, Jim says. Not the warnings, not the awareness. It's consequences and costs. Jim, I appreciate your take on that. Thank you so much. I'd like to think that maybe there's going to be a more aggressive approach at awareness as well. So I'll tell you, because this was reported. I have the story here from our friends at Action 2 News, WBAY.com. You can read it yourself. Beware the bear in the air is the headline. Love that headline. Way to go, WBAY news staff on that one. Beware the bear in the air. They are going to be flying today, Tuesday, August 24th, enforcing over Highway 26 in Fond du Lac County. Now, if you drive that stretch, Highway 26, basically between, Oshkosh and Highway 151, right? Centered on, what's the ticket? Rosendale. So that stretch, it sounds like to me, Fond du Lac County, Highway 26 is where they'll be enforcing over the skies. I hope they've got signs up. I hope they put those mobile little signs that they can, put up, like if there's detours or traffic alerts that need to be up, they can park one of those signs right where you exit 41 onto 26 and say, heads up, we're watching from above. I hope they do that, because I do think that there is, maybe not everybody, but I think there are some drivers out there for whom that kind of awareness would make a difference. And one of them's in my inbox. Jessica writing in saying, known by my family and friends as NASCAR for my speedy driving habits, aerial enforcement signs absolutely make me slow down. They could be totally lying about being in the air, but if there's a warning provided, I'm slowing down. So Jessica's the kind of driver that the State Patrol is counting on. The kind of driver who says, you know what? I'm not taking the risk. If you're warning me that you are enforcing above, I'm just going to take that warning as good grace, and I'm going to slow down this time. Now, I suspect next time Jessica gets behind the wheel, maybe not slowing down unless there's another warning. But, that's the idea, is trying to get people to slow down, trying to reduce reckless, aggressive driving. And if people will do that simply by knowing enforcement is happening, that's great. And that's what Jessica's saying. But Jim says he doesn't really think that's going to get it done. He doesn't say that that's enough to get people to slow down. Jim's saying basically it's got to be right at the verge of losing their license before people are actually going to take heed and slow down. Sally writing in saying, Josh, having eyes in the sky is nothing new. They've been around and doing this for a long time. I think the quickest way to slow down traffic is to have an officer pulling over a speeding driver and giving them a ticket for speeding. Knowing that the enforcers are out there is always an incentive to slow down. That's my take, says Sally. So I love that, Sally. And I agree with you. Right? The point here, knowing the enforcers are out there is always an incentive to slow down. But that's it, is as Jim said, oftentimes you've got to see that enforcement happening. You've got to drive past the squad car parked in the weeds in the median in order to register and say, ooh, I got to slow down. Now, Jim is observing that oftentimes that slowing down can create other problems. That's back for our road rage segment another time. But this specifically on the enforcement of speeding and aggressive driving and what it takes to slow people down, Sally's saying pulling people over and giving them a ticket is what's going to slow people down. I know if I'm driving up and down Highway 41, which I do probably once, maybe twice a month, I'm not on the roads all that often. I don't drive a ton, especially on the highways. And so this is not a huge concern for me. Also, like Jim, I set my cruise control and just kind of roll with it. But if I am approaching where I see an officer sitting, shooting speed gun, and I know I can see it, if my cruise is set, I'm under the speed limit or at least within the reasonable range, that's fine. I'm not even going to tap my brake. I'm just going to keep rolling. These people who are doing like 75, and then when they see a cop, they slow down to 67 in a 70. Again, I don't understand that. You are creating more potential risk there. That is reckless driving. But again, we don't enforce or condemn or punish those sorts of reckless acts. We punish those that are driving way too fast. And well, we should, because that is a risk for others on the road. So what's your take on aerial enforcement in our area. The police officers sometimes try to hide in the weeds. This time they're flying overhead, and they're letting you know about it because they hope that just knowing they're there is going to cause people to slow down and drive more carefully. Would that work for you? Was that going to get you to set the phone down and pay more attention as you're driving? Or will it take straight up getting caught in a speed trap for you to slow down your speeds? I want to hear your take. Share it with us on the Settlers Bank phone line. 281-1150 is that number, 281-1150. We got a line open waiting for you to share your take on speed enforcement and what's it going to take to get drivers to slow down. You could also email your take. Send that to freshtake1150@gmail.com. Back with more of your take when Fresh Take continues on WHBY.
Some mountain of clouds on the Michigan Ocean at dawn, and the sound of the surf and the sand is the sound
In
of
about 10 minutes here on Fresh Take, we got one more visit with the director and stars of Megs and Julie Go on a Road Trip before the big premiere event in Sheboygan this weekend. We'll talk with Ryan Liebel and Frankie Moscato about the movie, the premiere, and putting a score behind a movie, as well as supporting local and the importance of doing that right now. But right now, I'm looking for your take here on Fresh Take. I want to know your thoughts about aerial enforcement. The Wisconsin State Patrol is taking to the skies to spot drivers going too fast, making reckless moves, being too aggressive, and they're letting you know about it. In fact, they're giving out the schedule. They're going to be enforcing over Highway 26 in Fond du Lac County today. Later this week, their enforcement efforts move to Eau Claire County, Rock County, Dane County in this weekend. So this is all happening. Right now in Fond du Lac County, state trooper in the sky. Is just knowing that's happening enough to get you to slow down? I mean, I told you right where they're going to be. So if you're not driving on Highway 26 in Fond du Lac County, I guess no risk, right? So why slow down? But we know that people are driving too fast. We know reckless driving is a problem. We get reports about it tragically too often about people who are just driving too fast. And so this aerial enforcement, as Sally said in an email before the break, this is nothing new. They've been doing this for years. But to me, I like it because it is a creative approach, trying something not new necessarily, but different, added to the enforcement on the ground, the speed traps, if you will, to get people to follow the traffic laws, to enforce those rules. Our caller Jim earlier had said that, a driver who's driving too fast suddenly spots a cop car on the side and slams on the brakes. And that's not good either. That can create chain reactions, rear enders, all kinds of problems. So are there other approaches, creative ideas for how we might improve enforcement of traffic laws? I'm curious if you've got some thoughts on these alternatives I came up with here, or if you've got others, I'd love to hear about it. Email me your take and your reactions. Send that to freshtake1150@gmail.com. We know that in many places they use cameras to enforce traffic laws, right? A red light camera is recording, and if you run through the red light, you're crossing the intersection after the light has already turned red, that video catches you, and it can read your driver's license, and it can send you a ticket. What if we installed cameras with speed guns on the highway? You didn't know which one, but on a certain stretch of interstate highway in a county, underneath one overpass, there's a camera installed. It can tell how fast you're going. It can read your license. And if you're driving more than, say, 5 over, they're going to send you a ticket. Would that be a good idea? See, because I understand what many of you are saying, which is the best way to slow people down is to have them see a cop. Have that officer right there on the road ready to hand out a ticket. And that's effective, I think, in many ways, but it's also high cost, I'll say. The time of that officer, right? There's only so many officers available on any given shift. There's only so many things they can do at that time. If they're spending that time just sitting parked next to the highway, that could very well slow down traffic. It could potentially avoid accidents. It could create accidents. You don't know for sure. But that takes the time and the energy of that officer. The resources invested in that officer, in that unit, are dedicated now to sitting there next to the highway. If we installed cameras with radar guns or the speed guns, that wouldn't have to happen. You could issue these tickets automatically. You could actually save money by not having the officers sit there and make more money by issuing more citations, if that's the goal. State Patrol trying to be very clear, their goal of aerial enforcement, not to write a bunch of tickets, but to get people to slow down. So here's another idea for getting people to slow down that doesn't require any time or energy from law enforcement. What if we used the onboard computers in our cars? What if we required automakers to send speed data reports to law enforcement, and we could issue the tickets retroactively? Right? You don't have to be out there and catch the speeder, but your car is tracking where and when you are driving at what speeds, and it can report if you were speeding. Again, I don't have all the kinks worked out in a plan like that, but that is a proposal for consideration. We know that your auto insurance company can plug a little machine into your car and download and track all that data, and it can affect your insurance premiums. Why not put that data in the hands of law enforcement? If you knew that law enforcement was going to get the speed report from your car, would you be speeding? I think it would be pretty risky to continue to drive too fast if you know the police are going to get that data. I think this is the kind of thing that after a couple of rounds of this, maybe it would take a few months. I think that would slow people down pretty quick. Although I also suspect something like this would never get off the ground. You'd never get this to be enacted. I think people would light their hair on fire in opposition to something like this. And yet we know that enforcing the basic rules of the road can be a costly and labor-intensive effort. And law enforcement, while it will sometimes prioritize traffic law enforcement, they're usually prioritizing other needs, other actions, other cases. So I appreciate this aerial enforcement and especially the public awareness effort because the most often the way that we enforce the law is because people do so voluntarily. Like, I'm going to put my wild guess out there. 90% of the time, the reason people are following the law is because they're voluntarily agreeing to follow the law. So the more we can do to encourage voluntary compliance as opposed to the need for specific enforcement, I'm in favor of that. And I'd love to see some creative solutions in that regard. Speed cameras on the highway, leveraging onboard technology in our vehicles to do this. These are just a couple of examples I came up with. I'd love to hear your ideas. Share them with me via email. Send your suggestions for creative speed enforcement to freshtake1150@gmail.com. That's freshtake1150@gmail.com. We're going to leave it there for now. We'll have another topic for you to share your take on tomorrow's show after the 9 o'clock news. But right now, I'm excited to welcome back Ryan Liebel. Gotten to be a pretty good friend of the show here recently, along with Frankie Moscato, a great friend of the station, to talk about the premiere of Megs and Julie Go on a Road Trip happening at the Weil Center in Sheboygan later on this week. We'll talk about the event and we'll talk about making movies and supporting local with Ryan Liebel and Frankie Moscato when they join me after this here on Fresh Take. You're listening to WHBY. Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. You can find their offices in Appleton, Green Bay, or Oshkosh, or find them online at hooperlawoffice.com for your elder law and estate planning needs. Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. Welcome back to the show, and glad to welcome back to the show once again, director and star of Megs and Julie Go on a Road Trip, Ryan Liebel, with us on the Settlers Bank phone line. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
Ryan, the last time you were with us, you had your co-star Wes Tank joining you. This time, you bring another co-star from Megs and Julie, also a friend of the station, singer-songwriter Frankie Moscato with us as well. Frankie, welcome back to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. I just love the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm glad to have you here, and I can't wait to hear a little bit more about your experience in making this movie. But Ryan, let's start with first things first. For those who may have missed your earlier appearances on the show, remind listeners about the film that you made.
It's called Megs and Julie Go on a Road Trip. It's a very funny and heartwarming movie with a lot of physical comedy in it, and we did it totally and completely in Wisconsin with a Wisconsin crew and cast.
Which is super fun. I watched the film last summer when it was originally digitally released. Coming up on Saturday is the in-person live premiere event at the Weil Center in Sheboygan. I'll just put it out there right now for folks who are looking to get tickets. You can get details and get your tickets to reserve your seat at the Weil Center website. That's weilcenter.com, WEILL center.com. So, Ryan, in this film you mentioned, made entirely in Wisconsin, as much Wisconsin talent as you could cram into a film. How did you get Frankie involved?
Well, I was doing a general casting. I needed to find somebody who could play someone who was 15 or 16 years old. And I think Frankie submitted through Oncada, but I don't quite recall. But I got a video audition submission from her and fell in love with her pretty quickly. She's really funny and she's very alive. And so that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah. Frankie, tell us a little bit more about that process, about how you got involved with the film.
Yeah, well, I've been in front of a camera for as long as I can remember, and my parents would record me, and I would post up, and people wanted to see more of me, and even Ellen DeGeneres, when I was 4, she asked me to come on her birthday episode, and unfortunately I was on vacation and I didn't see the message, but I got an agent, and the next thing you know, I was auditioning for opportunities every single week, and I do voiceovers and photo shoots, and every once in a while I land a film role, and that's how I ended up in this feature film for Miss Ryan, and it was just such a wonderful experience.
So you'd worked with an agent in getting these sort of in front of camera opportunities in the past. Was this your first feature film?
I had done several in the past,
okay.
But honestly, this was one of my favorites.
And those Wisconsin ties might have something to do with that, maybe?
Absolutely. All in Wisconsin, yes.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that process. How many days were you involved in shooting? Talk to us a little bit about what that was like being on set.
Yeah. Well, it was one full day of my filming, and everybody was just so nice. I go into these kinds of projects like this is a mission, but I come out with a new set of friends, and I feel like I built this huge relationship with Miss Ryan and her cast, and I'm just so proud of her. And as a female role model, a film director, a producer, an actress, an artist. So it's really just an inspiring opportunity for me.
Yeah, very cool to be a part of that. And even having had a lot of experience in front of camera, to do this with people locally. That's a big part, Ryan, of what you were doing with this film as well. You wanted to support local through this entire project.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I got involved with theater at a fairly young age. I was about 13 when I started doing theater, and I did professional theater in Milwaukee. And what I always notice about Wisconsin, and I'm sure a lot of people will say this, is that it's very supportive of the arts. There are a lot of amazing art programs. People actually go to the theater. The arts are a big deal in Wisconsin, yes. And because of that, I think there's a lot of talented people there who aren't necessarily showcased. So I just like the idea of making it a completely local experience and going to Wisconsin first and seeing if I could cast it with local Wisconsinites first. And we were able to do that. We pulled that off. So I was proud of that. And I always also like giving people who are not necessarily known or up and coming. I like giving people chances too. Yeah. And that's kind of what we did. Some of the people in this movie had never been in the film before, and I worked with them beforehand and just sort of, worked with them in person and got them confidence and believed in them, and they really delivered when it was time to shoot. So that was also a cool process. So simply the act of being able to fully cast and shoot and produce this film in Wisconsin, that was one of the goals of you taking on this project, Ryan, just being able to show that it could be done. Yeah, I had shot a few commercials there. I had shot a few music videos, and I was sort of meeting more and more crew people and sort of seeing what talent was there, videographers, drone video people, lighting, all that kind of stuff. And I realized that there were a lot of people there, and through that, and because of that, I sort of had the confidence that I could pull off a feature film. And when I was putting all of the pieces together, everybody was also so excited about the movie and just the concept of a big, funny Wisconsin comedy. There was just a lot of support, and so it was really actually a pleasant experience. It's kind of like what Frankie said, like, you come out of it making a lot of friends. And, I'm a very particular kind of director and writer. And because I'm an actor, I treat people probably a little bit differently than just someone who's a director. But I believe that the set should be an exciting place to be. It should be a fun place to be. It should be a creative place to be. And it should cultivate and support the artist, not make them scared or intimidate them.
Yeah.
And I think we pulled that off.
One other thing I want to ask you about, Ryan, is the music. We've here, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I got to know Frankie Moscato as a singer-songwriter and musician and performer. Did you work any of Frankie's music into this film?
Yeah, I did, and that was sort of interesting. When she first auditioned, she obviously sent the audition, but she also sent footage of her singing. And I really love her voice. I love her style of singing. So throughout the whole process, I sort of had in the back of my mind that I wanted original music in the film. And my husband's a singer-songwriter, so I put his music in. And then I talked to Frankie about this particular part in the movie that's sort of like, we call it the all is lost moment.
Yes.
Sort of a typical moment in most movies. And I explained the movie to her, and she sat down and she wrote a song. And the song was so perfect for the film that I was like, I don't even know how she did it. But we made a few adjustments in terms of instrumentation, and that is in the movie now. So not only is she acting in it, her song's also in it, and I just think it's the perfect song for the film, you know.
Frankie, tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, when I found out that I get to write a song for a movie, I was so thrilled. And I remember I just went right to my room, and I didn't talk to anybody. I just turned off all the lights and this little lamp on by my keyboard, and I went right to work. And a couple hours later, I ran downstairs to show my parents, and I played it for them, and they said, let's do this. That I think it sounds great. And we started recording, and it just happened so fast. And I'm so humbled that Miss Ryan asked me to do it.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that you had done lots of work before in front of camera before. You've been in feature films. Had you gotten music into a film that you were involved in before?
This was my very first time, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
It was a total different experience than having my music in music videos. It was very cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's really exciting stuff. We're talking with Ryan Liebel, director and star of Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip, along with her co-star, as well as a contributor to the music in the film, our local favorite singer-songwriter, Frankie Moscato. They're with us on the Settlers Bank phone line. And when we come back, we'll talk a little more about supporting local through a local in-person film premiere. Where to get your tickets, what happens after the premiere, and we'll talk a little more with Frankie about this exciting experience being involved in a live film premiere right here in Wisconsin. Much more to come on Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip live premiere event happening Saturday, August 28th at 7 p.m. the Weil Center in Sheboygan. We'll continue the conversation when Fresh Take is back after this on WHBY. Real Local Radio, gearing up for an in-person live film premiere in Sheboygan this weekend. We're talking with co-stars of Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip, star and director Ryan Liebel, and her co-star and musical contributor, Frankie Moscato. They're both with us on the Settlers Bank phone line. So, Ryan, we've talked about it a couple times now. We want to make sure folks are getting their tickets and get ready to go to the live in-person premiere event this Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Weil Center in Sheboygan. What are folks going to find when they attend the premiere event? What'll happen?
Well, it's so exciting, isn't it? I can't believe it's happening so quickly. I'm like, what's going on? I made the announcement like 3 months ago, and it's only like 4 days away. It's crazy. But what's going to happen? We're doing all kinds of local sort of tie-ins. If you go to Trattoria Stefano or Il Rotrovo, they'll give you a free appetizer if you show your ticket, which is kind of amazing. Yeah. We're also doing group rates for the event. So if people want to, a company wants to bring 10 or more people, you just have to call the Weil Center directly, and they'll give you group rates. So if you want to bring a big corporate group, you can do that. Or if a bunch of girlfriends want to bring a bunch of, other girlfriends,
sure,
you can do group rates. The John Michael Kohler Center has a cool animated film exhibition going on, and they're sort of doing tie-ins with us. Go to the John Michael Kohler Center and then walk 2 blocks over to the premiere. But we're going to be there. We're all going to be there a bit early doing photos and stuff, meeting a few people. The doors open at 6. The movie starts at 7 promptly, and then we'll do a quick cast and crew panel after, so people can ask us any questions they want. But it's cool. I mean, as you know, the Weil Center is a very local theater. It's involved with the community. The concession is going to be local. Three Sheeps Brewery, all kinds of fun people are going to be part of the concession. So it's very much a fun, easy thing to go attend and be a part of. And we really want people to join us because we want to meet everybody and we want to make everybody laugh. And we want to celebrate the movie. We weren't able to because of COVID, and this is our sort of final, celebration of the film. So we want people to come out.
And we just want to note, as far as COVID precautions go, masks are encouraged for this event. Is that right?
Yeah, they're totally encouraged, and people can also spread out. I mean, the theater's pretty big, so if people want to do 6-foot distance or spread out, they totally can. There's going to be plenty of room to do so.
Awesome. And I love those local tie-ins. A great way to get local businesses on board and get the community engaged and invested in this project. Frankie, I'm curious, again, we've talked a little bit, you've done some in front of camera work, you've been involved in films before. Have you participated in a film premiere before? Have you walked the red carpet, for example?
I have, but I'm really looking forward to this. My own calendar's capacity right now is just completely exhausted, but sure enough that God answers my prayers, and I'm going to be there, and I'm just so thrilled.
That is very cool. So you'll be there at the premiere event this Saturday. Doors at 6, film at 7 at the Weil Center in Sheboygan. Now, you mentioned before having been in front of camera for music videos, and that's a lot different than doing a feature film. Are you working on any other film projects or music video projects right now?
They're coming soon, and
I'm sorry, that was for Frankie.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sure Ms. Ryan is really busy right now. But yes, I do have some things coming up soon. I'll be going to Nashville shortly to actually stay there for a while. And my homework right now is to write 10 songs so we can get back to work right now. But, a lot of people ask if I prefer music videos over films. And in life, there's just so many things that you're not in control of. But when it's my music video, I'm in control, and that's what I prefer. I'm kind of a control freak, and my track record has been huge. I've won awards in Hollywood and London and Houston.
Oh, so award-winning career, no doubt. I will also mention American Idol Golden Ticket recipient as part of that process. And I'm not sure if we still have Frankie with us or if her line got dropped. Frankie, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still there.
There we go.
Okay, good.
So just a minute or so left, but you were mentioning the awards that you've received and gave us a little confession, kind of a control freak. I think success often requires that kind of trait. And so I'm not surprised at your success having come with all that hard work, Frankie. And Ryan, you too. This film has been years a labor of love, not just in making, but then in promoting and releasing. And it all comes to the big live premiere event this weekend, Saturday, August 28th. At 7 p.m. Again, you can get your tickets to the event and details about the film at the Weil Center website, WEILL Center.com, the Weil Center in Sheboygan. And I know, Ryan, last thing here, we just have less than a minute left, but this the supporting local piece is big here. That's not just kind of a novelty add-on. This was a central part of this project for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely local movie, and I literally reached out to people and said, hey, I need a restaurant, I need a motel, I need an office space, I needed this, I needed that. And people came out of the woodwork to contribute to the movie. So, yeah, it's definitely local. It's all about giving back and highlighting all of these companies, too, like Trattoria Stefano, which is doing this appetizer thing with us, and they're going to have a Mags and Julie drink, too, which is kind of fun. They're in the movie. Their restaurant is in the movie, and they let me go in there and shoot there when they were closed on a Monday. So it's all about sort of flowing power back to everybody who came out to help us make it happen. And now we want local support there too. We want awesome Sheboygan County people to come out and join us, celebrate, laugh a lot, and end off the summer on a really positive note.
I love that. Yeah, that's right. A great way to sort of wrap up August, do something fun, get out, support the community, support local businesses, and support a local filmmaker. Ryan Liebel, the director and star of Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip, inviting you to attend the live premiere event this Saturday, August 28th at 7 p.m. is the film time. Doors open at 6. Get your tickets at wilecenter.com. Ryan, thanks for your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me again.
And the one and only Frankie Moscato. Great to talk to you again. Good luck with all your future projects.
You are the best. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. When we come back, we turn our attention to state politics, and we welcome in our friend Jesse Opoyan from the Cap Times. Stick around. Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. Find their offices in Appleton, Oshkosh, or Green Bay, or find them online at hooperlawoffice.com. For your elder law and estate planning needs, Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. Welcome back to the show. It's Fresh Take. I'm Josh Duclos here on Tuesday, August 24th, with more conversations to get you thinking, not tell you what to think. Glad to have you with us. Glad to have our man Zach Morris working the boards for us in the Myron Construction Studio, and thrilled to welcome back after too long of an August recess for her here on Fresh Take, Jesse Opoyan, the Capitol reporter for the Cap Times in Madison. She's with us on the Settlers Bank phone line. Good morning, Jesse.
Good morning, Josh.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing good. We've missed you. Luckily, nothing has happened in Madison for the last several weeks, right?
No, it's been super quiet.
Yeah, super quiet. Well, and we'll start right there. There's like the dog days of summer thing where like August is the month where you kind of like can tune out a little bit. Nothing really happens. I don't know how long that was true. I think it's pretty safe to say that that is no longer true, given the few years we've had here of just wild, crazy stories, big-time national news, international events happening in August. Have you gotten that feeling that this whole, like, forget about August, kind of take your vacation and tune out thing, that is no longer true?
Yeah, I don't really think that there's any good time to tune out and take your vacation, but as someone who's really bad at doing that, I finally actually did do that for like a week or two.
Good.
So I just let it happen anyway. And guess what? It turns out there was still plenty of news when I got back.
All kinds of things to catch up on. So we'll do a little bit of that. Of course, we'll dig back into some of the reporting you've done recently and talk about a few of the other stories that have been making news. But just to set the stage a little bit, yes, Jesse has luckily and well-deservedly taken a little bit of time off. And so we're catching up on some of these stories. We might not have all the very latest on any of them, but the conversation is always very well worth it. And frankly, sometimes I feel like I learn more talking with people as we're both trying to catch up rather than even just asking questions to get the facts from that person who has it all in their head. As fun as that can be, Jesse, we know that sometimes the conversation can float in interesting ways when we don't quite know where it's headed, right? So
that's definitely true.
Yeah, so we'll do a little bit of that today. I really do appreciate the time. And of course, one of the things that really popped up here in August, among others, the Delta wave of coronavirus. I think, but even in late July, people were starting to talk a little bit about Delta, be a little more concerned, Jesse, but August was really when this sort of latest wave of the pandemic kind of came into being, and we started to see the latest mask orders put into place. And so, of course, that led to the latest round of lawsuits. And you reported relatively recently about some lawsuits that were filed in Dane County over mask mandates. Tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
Yeah, so I might remember from the last time around when we had mask mandates at the state level, the state Supreme Court ruled that the governor can't issue another one of those public health or emergency orders with a mask mandate without getting approval from the legislature. So at this point, it's really up to local governments to decide if they want to do that. And I think Dane County is the only one that's actually gone ahead with that since Delta kind of emerged on the scene. But Dane County issued a mask mandate when things started picking up here in terms of case count, and it was not as strict, I guess, as previous orders, but still, pretty strict. And the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which is a conservative law firm that has represented a lot of the folks who have wanted to overturn some of these things, particularly sort of on the argument of government overreach. They did file a lawsuit, hasn't moved forward with any news beyond that, but they did file a lawsuit looking to overturn that mask mandate.
All right, so when the orders came back, the lawsuits came down, and is the idea here in the WIL, that's Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, we call them WIL, is their lawsuit really basically saying, hey, no, Supreme Court said the state couldn't do this, and the same thing applies to the county, or are they making a different argument?
Yeah, it's actually a different argument, and there's sort of two cases with the court that kind of indicate where this could go. On the one hand, Will did try to sue Dane County over their gathering limits a while ago, and they were unsuccessful in doing that. So you might say, okay, they'll probably be unsuccessful in this. But on the other hand, just a few months ago, they also sued over whether the public health department here has the authority to, say, close schools or, implement sort of a sweeping mandate like that over schools. And it was ruled that they do not have the authority to do that that authority to issue those orders has to be a little bit more narrow, more specific. And so that could indicate that they might be successful with this.
Sure.
It probably depends on which one of those, I guess, the court decides applies more and carries more weight here.
Right, and knowing this Wisconsin Supreme Court makeup, it could be a pretty evenly split decision. We've seen those 4-3 rulings coming out where one side is almost arguing the opposite of what the other side is arguing, and it depends who's got more votes for their argument as to how these things turn out. So, again, we're not going to be settling which argument is correct here, but my question for you, Jesse, on this, again, we've been around this bush a few times now. So I'm curious how it still isn't clear what these powers are. As you said, Will's lawsuit is challenging the county government's interpretation of its own powers. How is this still so confusing? How has this not yet been clarified to a degree where we know what local governments can and cannot do? Do you have a sense of sort of what's missing or what we still need to find out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of, it hasn't really come up before, to
Oh,
this
that's fair,
degree
okay.
until, you haven't really had public health departments taking really big dramatic actions until COVID for the most part. And the statute that they're questioning here is pretty vague. You could interpret it, I think, a few different ways. Not that I'm a lawyer, but,
right.
That's sort of the question on a lot of these things is, what does the statute say? What does it mean? What was it intended to mean? Or, is it doing something that it's not intended to do? And, that's sort of where we're at least on this one in particular, where it's really just a question of, like, what does this statute mean when it talks about these powers that, the county has?
Well, and from your report on this subject from August 18th, I'm reading a quote from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty Deputy Counsel Dan Lennington. He says, the courts have made clear that unelected public health officers do not have unlimited authority. Dane County's health officer, simply put, doesn't have the power to order universal masking or anything else without express legal authority. Now, that last clause there, Jesse, without express legal authority, had me thinking and taking me back to a Supreme Court ruling from late July about the CDC's eviction moratorium, where the court was asked, should this be shut down right now? And a slim majority said, no, we'll let it wind down since it's scheduled to end on July 31st anyway. But if any other action like this would be taken, it would require specific legislative authorization. That reminds me a little bit about the construction here, or it brings to mind this without express legal authority. I guess this is the issue, right? Does the law as it's written offer this power and confer this power, or is this not specifically granted? We're having this dispute at the local level here in this lawsuit. We're having this dispute at the federal level over the eviction moratorium. Or am I seeing false equivalency there?
No, I think that's a pretty good comparison, and it's also, kind of what it came down to on some of the statewide stuff too. It was a little bit clearer on the state level because of I guess that the statute just was a little bit clearer on that, but this one is a little bit more vague and confusing.
Yeah, and and this gets back to the question of why, right? Why are we doing this? What is motivating this? And in your report, you mentioned Wisconsin experiencing a steady increase, or the governor called it a concerning steady increase in cases. And you look at the curves, cases definitely going up. I guess one of my questions right now is, Delta cases aren't necessarily the same as they were in the Alpha variant, right? The first time we were going around, we've got a lot of people vaccinated. And so are the measures we utilized the first time around, are they appropriate this time around? I guess that question is to be answered by public health officials. They're the ones who get to decide that. But then there are these challenges to how they carry out those powers and issue those orders. So are you expecting like a definitive ruling in this specific challenge here to Dane County? Are you expecting this is going to come out and kind of set precedent for what we can expect other governments at the local level to be able to do in future incidents like this? Should we see another pandemic?
That's a good question. I guess given the fact that this issue has come up in different ways and had different outcomes before, there's a chance that we don't end up with something really definitive.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat up to the court, too, to decide, I guess, whether they want to issue something that's really specific to this case or if they want to issue something that's a bigger precedent.
Yeah, that's a really important point right there, is sometimes it's up to the court to decide just how broad of a ruling they're going to issue. Are they going to say, in any case of a public health emergency, public health officials have X power or don't have X power? Or are they going to say, in Dane County, Wisconsin, in June of 2021, this power is or is not acceptable, this order is or is not legal? They could be very narrow. They could also be more broad, and perhaps it would then inform actions and decisions taken in other parts of the state. But that's where we are in the wait-and-see business when it comes to these court rulings, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yes, at least we're there together. We're talking with Jessie Opoyan, Capitol reporter from the Cap Times, recapping some of her reporting over the past few weeks. And when we come back, last week, Governor Evers announced more aid to Wisconsin farmers. Who is it for? How do they get it? Where is it coming from? And didn't we have a farm crisis before the pandemic? Is this the same thing? Is it different? We'll talk about it with Jessie Opoyan, and later we'll dig into the recently released census data and the headaches it is creating for local redistricting. All of that still ahead when we're talking with Jessie Opoyan from the Cap Times here on Fresh Take. You're listening to WHBY. In about 10 minutes here on Fresh Take, we'll turn to the decennial dispute over line drawing. Redistricting is underway now that census data is released. We'll talk about it. But right now, we're going to talk about helping Wisconsin farmers with Jessie Opoyan, Capitol reporter for the Cap Times in Madison. She's with us on the Settlers Bank phone line. Jessie, you reported after Governor Evers announced last week $50 million more in aid available to Wisconsin farmers. Who is this for, and where is the money coming from?
Well, there don't seem to be a lot of restrictions on who it's for at this point, although I'm sure we're going to be seeing more details on that as the program actually launches and gets off the ground. But it's for Wisconsin farmers who are hurting, and the money is coming from federal funding from the CARES Act.
So these are federal...
Actually, just kidding. It's coming from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay, but I see.
The first round came from the CARES Act.
Yes, I was going to say, that's where it's a little hard to follow the bouncing ball here, because this is adding money to an existing state program, but the money for the original program came from the CARES Act. That was the coronavirus relief back from May of 2020, I think, or spring of 2020. This latest top off in that existing program comes from American Rescue Plan Act funding. So both different federal buckets of money going into the same Wisconsin program. But to that point of like, it's for farmers who are hurting, I hope, let me ask you, do you think we will see more details? Did you see any details or limitations in that existing, it's called the Wisconsin Farm Support Program. It was launched last year. Are there a lot of restrictions, or is it basically if you can show us you're a farmer, you can get some money?
That's a good question that I do not have the answer to.
Okay, fair. Because I could understand wanting to get this funding out as far and wide as possible, but I also know that in agriculture, the range of size of operation, the type of operation, right? The relative level of corporate involvement versus a family-owned farm. Like, those are important factors in determining the amount of support, the sources of support, maybe even the sources of difficulty in running the farm. So I would assume that the government, and specifically the governor, will want this money targeted in some way.
Yeah, I think that I'm sure that's true. I know that, as a general rule, I think there's been more of a focus from this administration on some of the smaller family farms as opposed to some of those larger scale operations. And, so all I really know in terms of implementation is it's going to be run by DATCAP and the Department of Revenue. So it's two state agencies working together on this. And the applications aren't open yet. They'll open up after the fall harvest. So, I think as we're heading into that, that's when we're going to start to see probably some more details on eligibility.
That makes sense. And you do have a quote in your piece from DATCAP, that's the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, Secretary-designee Randy Romanski, who said these timely payments will make a real difference for our farmers, and they are unrestricted. So recipients across Wisconsin can use the money where it is needed most or make up for losses. So definitely doesn't sound like there'll be much in the way of limitations and restrictions on how the money can be used. But this brings me to the larger question. Like, I remember talking about farm crisis before we ever knew the word COVID. So I'm curious if there's any indication how much of this is COVID related and how much of this is just addressing that larger problem that we've seen happening here in our state for years. Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I think the same principle is probably true for most of the issues that we've seen become bigger problems under COVID, it was already an issue. Housing insecurity, food insecurity, farming, the farming industry. These are all areas of concern in the state before COVID, and COVID exacerbated a lot of the existing problems there. So I think in particular, there are a lot of factors that contribute to the challenges for the farming industry. Some international, some federal, some market-based, and COVID made all of that more difficult.
Yeah. And so, we've been hearing stories about local governments, counties that have millions of dollars coming their way, and they're looking for suggestions from residents about how they'd like to see that money used. I think that's as much about trying to keep people happy as it is about trying to spread the money around. Obviously, all these leaders are elected, so clearly they want to make sure people support how they decide to spend this money. But I will say, I think, directing some bucket of funding to help support family farmers is something that would be broadly supported in this state. Obviously, any policy that gets put forward by a politician is going to draw partisan opposition, just almost as a reflex. But this seems like one of those things where we've been doing it. There's more money available. Let's continue to do it and kind of just try to get through some of these difficult points. I don't think anybody thinks this is going to solve the farm crisis. This is really just about getting through this pandemic crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think this is intended to be that at all. If you look at what farmers got in the first round, they were eligible for up to $3,500 payment. That makes a huge difference, but it's certainly not going to solve every problem in your operation. Right. And I don't think it's intended to. It's, like you said, kind of doing what you can with what we have, and the federal money is here, so figuring out priorities and I think probably trying to hit some of those industries or groups of people that were already facing challenges that were made worse is definitely among those priorities.
Sure. And given the money that's flowing to local governments as well, I wonder if some of those county funds might make their way to local farm families as well, in addition to what might come from the state. And I suspect there will be federal programs that are directed towards agriculture producers as well, just given that large scale difficulties they've been seeing in getting the products to market, getting good prices, being able to pay their bills, right? That $3,500, depending on the size of your farm, that could be like 1 month of bills, and then you're just worrying about the next month. But that's it. It's better than nothing, and when we've got these funds available, I think certainly a worthy group to be spending it on. I will be interested to see if we see any kind of limits or restrictions or qualification criteria on this, whether that's size or whatever it might be. I see at the very end of your report, there's $3.3 million tucked in there in support of the ethanol industry. So not just food being produced by farmers, but also fuel, and that's getting some subsidy as well. You can read this report along with lots of great reporting on state politics at captimes.com. And that includes another story that we're going to be talking about next. Jesse was on the story before her little break, well-deserved vacation. When the census data was released, we'll talk about what we see in the numbers and what it means for the decennial process of redrawing our district boundaries for state and some federal offices. We'll talk about census data and redistricting when we continue our conversation with Jesse Opoyan from the Cap Times. You're listening to Fresh Take here on WHBY. Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. Call Peter Harbach and Sarah Kahns at 920-250-9959 for your elder law and estate planning needs. Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. Welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm Josh Duclo. Conversations to get you thinking, not to tell you what to think. Here on Tuesday, August 24th, we're thinking about how changing communities can change our politics with Jesse Opoyan, Capitol reporter from the Cap Times in Madison. And Jesse, the redistricting process is now officially underway after the delayed handoff of data from the U.S. Census Bureau to state and local governments. That is the process of redrawing lines following the 2020 census for elections beginning in 2022. What is the kind of takeaway or the beginning headlines, early indications from this census data?
Yeah, I mean, some of the top lines are, first of all, the state is not gaining or losing any congressional districts. We're going to stick to 8. The state is not growing super fast, less than 4% over the last 10 years in population. Like way behind the national growth. The biggest growth is happening in Dane County. It's huge. We're exploding here. More than a third of the state's population growth actually happened in Dane County. So I think where we're going to see the most changes are going to be in the Dane County area and then in the Milwaukee area, which dropped quite a bit. So other parts of the state may see some minor shifts, but most of the changes seem like they're probably going to happen in the Milwaukee-Madison corridor.
Okay, and that's because much, as you said, 1/3 of the state's total population growth came in Dane County, but there was reduction in population in Milwaukee County?
Right, that's right.
Yeah, wow. So that's going to be the focus then of some of the shifting. And I know we've already heard some of the controversy, the several lawsuits that have been filed over redistricting, a process that literally hasn't even gotten to the legislature yet. And there's already multiple lawsuits being filed about which court should be hearing these eventual challenges down the road. I guess, employment guarantees for lawyers, I guess. That's one thing that we can always count on here with redistricting. But one of the controversies is over just how much the map will have to change. And you laid out here, according to sort of the top line, the surface level analysis, there's not a lot of change overall in the state's population. And so some are arguing that shouldn't mean a whole lot of change in the district lines either, right?
Right. I mean, the principle that we have to keep in mind is if you're looking at districts is, are they, can you achieve this one person, one vote principle? So, does your vote in, this county have the same amount of weight that it would in another county? So if you're in a county that's a lot more populated and the district stays the same, your vote would arguably be diluted compared to a district of, another district that has a much lower population.
See, and this is we talked
about.
So
the idea is to even those out.
Yeah, right. To try to even out, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to characterize what you just said as you're trying to make more competitive districts. Is that a fair way of characterizing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is what I find so fascinating about this, because I've heard this before, and it actually is funny to me, because one of the complaints you'll often hear about gerrymandering is look at the ridiculous shapes of these districts. Now, you know as well as I do that in addition to changing population, we've also kind of been sorting ourselves out, right? You are more likely to be living in a neighborhood or a community with people who tend to share your values and political beliefs than you are to be living in one with the opposite. Some places are much more mixed than others, but there's this kind of general big sort that's going on with our population, not just in Wisconsin, but across the country. That's been one demographic trend I've heard a lot about. So to construct a competitive district might actually require some pretty ridiculously shaped districts, couldn't it?
Yeah, that is an argument, and that's not wrong. I think the thing about the weird shaped districts is, it could be used to make it more competitive, or it could be used to carve out, districts that are more beneficial. I mean, no politician really wants a super competitive district. Like, they want a district that's going to benefit them. It's going to be more likely to swing their way. So, competitive doesn't necessarily always enter into the equation.
When you are the one who's up for election, you're like, we can make all the other districts competitive, just not that one. And you've got one person in every district making that case. So yeah, that is the perverse set of incentives that are operating here. That's one of the basic arguments that I hear often in trying to advocate for this allegedly nonpartisan redistricting commission, right? Somehow you're going to find people who could be above and beyond any kind of political consideration. Some states do this. And I know you quote in your piece here, Sachin Chetta, who's the director of the Fair Elections Project, advocating for what they call the Iowa model. I suspect people in Iowa still complain about gerrymandering, and I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they do. No, they do. I can attest to that. People in Iowa don't think their model is perfect. They might think. I think probably some think it's better than others, sure. But no one. You're never going to have people who are 100% happy with maps, and there's a reason why nonpartisan redistricting reform hasn't passed legislature, because at the end of the day, do you really want to do that to yourself?
Right.
Turns out most people don't.
And what you're asking legislatures to do is literally give up their own power, which is probably one of the harder things to ask lawmakers to do, is give up some portion of their own power. Now, a little crunch that's created here, because as we said, this data was supposed to be transferred from the Census Bureau to the locals months ago. Delays with the 2020 census itself, some in part due to the pandemic, delayed some of this transfer of data. So now the locals are under really tight statutory timelines written into state law to get their part of this done. Why didn't the state delay that deadline? I know this was a while ago. Is that something you can sort of take us back to? There was an opportunity for the governor to change these timelines, and he didn't.
Yeah, and I remember this, and I remember that there was an effort to do it, and I really don't remember why it didn't happen, other than that, once again, no one agreed on the bill that was going to do it.
I don't know that it was any more complicated than that, actually. I don't remember hearing a lot of really compelling reasoning and rationale. So regardless of whether they should have or why they didn't, they didn't. So these county governments are now under really compressed timelines to get the redistricting process done, which itself is already controversial. So my exit question for you, Jesse, combining that reality with the hangover of public uncertainty that still lingers around some aspects of the 2020 election, I was talking to a local official about this last week. Do you think the 2022 elections could actually see even more contested and controversial results than we saw in 2020?
Oh, gosh. I wouldn't rule it out for any number of reasons. Yeah. But, the timeline here is of concern, and there are some arguments as to that in several of the lawsuits that have been filed, essentially arguing that, you're heading in with uncertainty already. Candidates don't necessarily know where they're going to be running, right. Or, who voters don't necessarily know who, they should be looking at, or all of these things that kind of become uncertain as you're waiting for district lines to draw out. You're going in with uncertainty to begin with. Yeah. Not to mention any, like you said, hangover from the last time around, or even the time before that.
Yeah, good point. There's also some 2016 uncertainty still lingering out there. Jesse, I know you got to run, so we'll let you go here. Jesse Opoyan is a Capitol reporter with the Cap Times in Madison. We always enjoy her insights, and glad she got some time away for a vacation recently. Jesse, glad to have you back, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah, great to see you. Okay, before we take our break, I just want to draw this out a little bit more about these controversies. I have this really scary vision of the future. Given what we saw after the 2020 election, where you had individual members of a legislature, members of a elections commission, county commissioners, boards of elections all over the country being targeted and pressured to try to make the outcome the one people wanted, right? I'm not even going to bother getting into all of this right now. I'm not having that fight anymore. I'm over it. But what I'm not over is this sort of election as partisan battlefield. And I am imagining a future where disputes over redistricting, right? One map is going to have this specific ward in this district. A competing map would have it in another district, or the existing map has it here, the new map has it there, and there's going to be fights over which map should be operative. I am imagining partisan operatives fanning out in specific wards to try to get voters to do one thing or another, to appeal to be on this map, to demand a ballot with this person on it when that's not the district they're in anymore. Like, I am just imagining the tactics that we saw following the 2020 election, all the disputes around the presidential race, those kinds of tactics, the shameless lying that was done by so many people, those defamation lawsuits still currently working their way through the courts, by the way. But I'm just imagining those tactics now being applied to disputes over who should be voting in what district. And it's only going to get more messy from there. I hope I'm paranoid, over-exaggerating, and none of this ever comes to be. But I'm just worried that this confluence of election security controversy and a compressed redistricting timetable is going to magnify the uncertainty and the hysterics around elections in ways that are not going to be good and are only going to magnify the mistrust that people have in the system. I hope I'm wrong. But that's what I see. And if you've got thoughts, reactions, or any of the things that you want to share with me, I always welcome your email at freshtake1150@gmail.com. When we come back, we'll wrap things up here for this Tuesday with the takeaway. We'll do that right after this when Fresh Take continues on WHBY. Quickly running out of time here for this broadcast day, so we'll get right to wrapping it up, as we always do, with the takeaway. I was blessed with a really great education, all the way through, kindergarten through graduate school. And I'm always careful not to try and confuse or conflate a good education with being smart. One does not necessarily require or indicate the other. I do think it is important to be well informed. And that's especially true if you want to wade in to public policy debates. It's important if you want to debate that you know what you're talking about. And the truth is, anybody can get informed. The information's out there. It takes time and effort, of course. And you got to seek out the sources that don't confirm your views. You got to try to find the stuff that rounds out your worldview, that's telling you things you don't already know and maybe challenging some of your assumptions. But as I tell you often, very few people are actually willing to do that. So as a result, much of what passes for public policy debate, especially on cable news, is not informed at all. In fact, much of it is not honest. It's simply sophistry. And that's our topic for the takeaway this week. I told you yesterday this concept originates from 5th century Greece. But in our day and age, this term applies to arguments that feel right, but are wrong. In fact, they're manipulative and often fallacious. But we see them all the time. Constantly, we see sophistry in our debates. Why? Well, practically speaking, the talking heads who are pushing an agenda, they trust that most viewers who see their argument don't know enough to see through it and won't do the work to debunk it. They make a claim that sounds and feels right, and if you're predisposed to agreeing with the conclusion, you'll just blindly accept it. And if you're not, you won't. You'll reject it. But none of it's based on actual research or facts. It's based on tribalism, signaling, posturing. And that's not how debate is supposed to work. The idea of a debate is that two sides offer evidence and arguments and actually try to persuade one another. But persuasion is rare in our political culture. And frankly, there's one topic where the intransigence is most concerning because it's a life and death issue, and that's on the pandemic. Almost from the very beginning, our political leaders and policy advocates have manipulated public health messaging and data to advance their agenda. This is true on all sides of the debate, not just the one you're not on. Your side does this too. And early on, it was no surprise. Very few people knew much about this novel coronavirus, and so it wasn't hard with a little bit of data to scare people into doing totally absurd things that we quickly learned were not necessary. But that's it. We learned later. We learned more. And so as we learn more, it should be getting harder to get away with this silly sophistry. But some people are still susceptible. And that's not because the sophists, the people making these silly arguments, are getting better at it. In fact, sophistry does not require skill. As far as I'm concerned, all it requires is a lack of moral scruples. So if you are vulnerable to sophistry, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that's a choice you're making. You're only vulnerable to it if you want to be. Because sophistry works best when it's confirming our prior views. So on COVID, think about the past year, almost year and a half now. We've learned a lot about this virus and what we can do to protect ourselves. We've learned a lot from March 2020. So I'm curious, what have you changed your mind about when it comes to COVID? Anything? What can you say that you thought or believed last summer and now you think or believe something different because new information has come to light? Can you think of anything? If not, I'm going to say you're not paying very close attention. And for that, I would even congratulate you. But I think the more likely explanation for many is that you're willfully ignoring half the story. You're only absorbing those things that reinforce what you already think. We all do it. I do it too. But it's deadly when it comes to the coronavirus. And it's silly in most of its examples. When someone argues, even one death is too many, that is shameless sophistry because we don't apply that standard to anything else. If we did, we couldn't have a society or an economy. So that's sophistry. When someone argues, whatever public health says we should do, that's just intellectually lazy sophistry. It's appealing to think we should just blindly apply the recommendations of public health, but that's not practical. That's not realistic. That's intellectually lazy. When you hear details about one outbreak or a single study that is used to push broad and universal precautions and policies, that is sophistry. But then I also get emails like this. Well, if the masks work, if masks don't work, then why have doctors been wearing them? That's sophistry. So the sophistry is coming from all sides on this. Arguments that feel like there's something there, but if you dig even just a little bit below the surface, there's not. For this thing of like, well, if masks don't work, why have doctors been wearing them? You really think a 6-year-old wears a mask at the same level of efficiency as a doctor? And do you really think elementary schools have the same risk profile as a hospital emergency room? Again, if you've got the data on that, I'd love to see it. I am open to changing my mind. But on its face, it might sound and feel right. But if you look deeper, it's not. And the same is true from the other side. Pointing out the changing COVID recommendations. If they can't get their story straight, why should we believe them? Science is the answer. Science changes. Knowledge changes. That's a hard truth. But poking holes and casting doubt feels right to those who bristle at government control anyway, who prioritize personal liberty over public health, regardless of whether we're in a public health emergency. Both sides in the COVID debate use sophistry when it's useful and helpful to them. And the lack of an informed public makes these tactics not just possible, but successful. Public debate is not about being right or wrong. The facts evolve, science changes, and life and learning are all about accepting new information and holding loosely to our priors so we have room to accommodate new information. And that's the takeaway. Hope we'll see you tomorrow. Karen Schneider for the local news chat. Tiffany Holtz joins us, and the professors are back. But stay tuned. Haley Tenpass in Focus Fox Valley is coming up next.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free. Upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.